what I'm trying to do is not just like, me doing this, but guiding the conversations in such a way that people feel empowered to kind of go out and get stuff, and other people can find images or do like drawings or little poetry or something like that, and just figuring out how we facilitate that and allow some creativity.
Beautiful, beautiful. Love it. Love it, Lauren. Because it feels like, did you ever read the book 1984 by George Orwell?
I don't know if I actually read it. I've heard about it, but I don't know if I've read it.
Yeah, it's actually a really entertaining read. Some of these books that just like take you away into this other world, and you can't wait to get back to it.
Okay.
You chip away at it, and it's like that. It's a really great read, and there's a love story in there, and it's just wow. But among the things there is that it's like this, dystopian evil government of the future, Big Brother, pretty much what we have today with the NSA and whatnot. And I say cheerfully, pretty much what we have today. Anyway, and this government, whenever there's information that's convenient, it goes down the memory hole, right? What it really is like an incinerator or something. But you don't really know, and and this was written in the 1950s, so they didn't have obviously a lot of the tech that we have today, but they could envision it. And so all that is to say that without what you're doing, it feels like most of our meetings go down the memory hole, right? In theory, they're stored somewhere. They're really more going into this freeze historical archive somewhere in some underground vault. they may as well be there.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. One of my visions is if we can kind of develop a practice of doing this, then we can have all kinds of fun with it. And I kind of envision people trading these little quotes and sayings. It's kind of like what's his name, Cesare. Yeah, it's kind of like what he's doing, except like a little memeified.
Love it.
Where like people can kind of like it, they're more like these little, first of all, the ideas are more mimetic and more tradable, and more like garbage pail kids or something, where you can where we could gather all of these together one day, and then pull out the block party's greatest hits, with people choosing like the best quotes that have emerged, or like stuff like that.
Awesome. Yeah.
But so I'm not sure how, I don't really know the way, but I'm just like kind of confidently heading in this direction of there's something fun involved, I think.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. And so people would be encouraged to just go search for whatever images best describe what they're trying to say in pictures, right? Or what they think reflects is being said.
Yeah, so I think that there are different ways. There are all sorts of different ways that people could be inspired to write their own poetry, or do like little spoken word, or make up a little song, or go find videos that support this, or supporting evidence, or books that have something to do with this. You just can, search for the title, like so you can do so you can just search for a title, double click on it, and it shows up on the canvas. So you can kind of, and that's more fun. In a conversation, you can just, so you have a graphic representation of the, um, um, images that come up. So it's pretty easy to do. And people can get really creative with the images that they happen to find. Because some of these images that I found are sort of abstract. You can't just search for bullying, you're not going to get anything. So I had to somehow find an image. So I just thought, I'll search for fox hunting, because then I knew it would be a bunch of dogs and surrounded one box, so they could, like, gives the bullying impression. But you have to be creative in terms of finding these things. And so the point is to try to, like, uncover hidden talents of people, so.
Well, it's interesting. Um, I speak lots in metaphor, right? And like
Mhm.
analogies and whatnot. So this seems like this would be a kind of tool that someone like myself could really benefit from.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I like what you're saying about the fox hunt, because it's like, it's because if you say the word bullying, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, people have different associations and whatnot. You're really tapping into something that's a specific facet of bullying, right? That you have in mind,
Mhm.
which is this kind of ganging up and whatnot. Anyway, um, but with images, and uh, you recall that kind of topic map that I showed a few weeks ago, right? I presume. Um,
Topic
Here,
map.
I'll just screen share it. It'll be super fast. Let me just
Okay.
find the file here. Okay, here it is. Here it is. Screen share. So, I probably spent um, maybe three or 4 hours putting together this topic map that shows not all the topics I'm working on and interested in, but most of the big ones,
Mhm.
sort of a logical framework. And I had to work out like the categories and then the members of each category and what image would so this and I consider myself um like really good at this sort of new art form of this
Mhm.
century, which is you do a Google search, right? Rather than draw with your own style, your own repetitive style, where you're in a sense constraining yourself. Google image search sort of opens it up so that you type something and then you're scrolling through and it's like, oh, I wasn't thinking about that. But now that you put it in front of me, I'm thinking about that. And yeah, that's it. Right. Wow. And so the search can guide you.
Mhm.
Okay. Um, so anyway, but all that is to say is that, and I developed this skill set. And just to be clear, just because I think I'm good at it doesn't mean that I'm objectively good at it. I'm just saying, hey, I really like this form and I think I'm good at it. I developed this skill set when I was at Microsoft, and I would make a lot of PowerPoint presentations.
Mhm.
And I was designing these presentations to be used with me, with my voice on top of it in real time, in person.
Mhm.
Like I mean, just whip out my laptop and show somebody, or put it up on the big screen and say da 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 da. And these images were just huge accelerators, right? To be able to then point to this and point to that and talk about it. Um, anyway, uh, this is me just saying I feel like I'm right there with you, Lauren, with
Great. Great.
and because I would pick the image and I'd pick the words and I'd put them together, and then like even here, like root causes of our problems. It kind of starts with our evolutionary history, and then modern humans develop, did the agricultural revolution, but I call it totalitarian agriculture. I showed this one because I chose this image because it shows that most of the soil is just depleted, it's bare,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just monoculture, which separated us from nature. Between that and us killing animals, these were the two big forms of this separation. And once we got separate from really ourselves, that unleashed all this darkness. And then anyway, um, and then organized crime is right above that. They're the only two black and white images on the screen. Um, and anyway, like a new story for humanity. There's a lot of stuff that could represent story. I would think like a storybook, right?
Mm-hmm.
But here I focus on the mother reading to the child, right? Because what does a story do, right? It ultimately gives us peace in order to be able to proceed with, you know, with whatever, right? Um, and it helps us make sense of the world and everything. So anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I hope you like that image of collective super intelligence. I think I just did a Google image search on collective intelligence, and
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
yeah.
Yeah, I like it.
Well, thank you. Anyway, just wanted to share that, and then that helped me sort of both put together my own story um, in terms of where we at now, um, where are we going, what does the problem solution space look like, and it helped me form that story and then articulate it, and then just that was for me was a big turning point, getting that slide and then other slides, and it's really gone from there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But one of part of what I was trying to do here was sort of create like a German's Chinese character set, where these become like these icons that I can then use. Oh, let me grab these 5 and then tell a story based on those, right?
Mm-hmm.
So make them like these reusable icons, right?
Or, kind of allowing people to, I think, like pick and choose like quotes and then group them together and then make up symbols to just describe a tribe. So you symbolize like a grouping of ideas together in ways that don't, you don't have anything that captures it now.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting that you mentioned tribe and those symbols, and then I think of like tattoos, and
Mm-hmm.
who put on certain tattoos that basically says, look, I am so hungry to express myself in this mimetic graphical way, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not just to express myself, it's also to self-identify as a tribe.
Mm-hmm.
um, you know and anyway, I'm just really fascinated by this whole topic space, and what you shared with us, I think maybe a couple weeks ago, about tribes generally, and that people like to communicate with their tribes. That's been hugely impactful on my thinking. That just like crystallized, something that I think part of me kind of knew but didn't know. But then when you articulated it, now it's like,
Oh, really? Okay.
yeah, totally. No, because now, see, whereas before, I think I was thinking much more in terms of just like one big global community, one big collective superintelligence. It's like everybody
Mm-hmm.
just plug in and we're good to go. But now I'm thinking much more in terms of a community of communities, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where, your home base is your community, your tribe. right? And that will always be your home base, until you get a sex change and change tribes or something like that, so to speak. See, that's me speaking metaphorically. I'm using sex,
Mhm.
because it's just, anyway. Um, but you got your home base, and so for me, so if we're creating this vast new thing, this community of communities, which uh, may be something that we would be just sort of inherently uncomfortable delving into, were it
Mhm.
not for the fact that we could go as a tribe, right?
Mhm.
Like if I wanted to go to Mars, I would much rather go with a bunch of other humans than just me by myself in some weird spacesuit trying to understand myself with whatever Martians I meet there, right? I'd rather go
Mhm.
with a bunch of other humans so we can kind of all confer and do our own tribal thing, and then, as a tribe, go meet this other tribe, right?
Mhm. Yeah, I think that let me hang on just a second. I'm going to show you something. Oh no, that's not what I wanted. Okay. Okay, so I have this Wednesday meeting with these people that I like. And so these are annoying people. Like, we're defining our tribe. Who do we not like? Person who takes 5 hours to get through 1 hour of information. The kid with a ball that only wants to play his game. Mean girls that are bullies. Um, Someone who says, if you say 10 a.m. in the morning, they'll say, that's redundant. And then, here we have like things that we like. And just um it's almost like you capturing things along the way that allow us to show our tribe, and then um we can create symbols, and then through a kind of collective intelligence ontology, it's like these symbols can merge, and people can discover that they're actually the same tribe, and that this symbol is compatible with this symbol, or and that way you can kind of go like you can travel through wormholes through different systems, where you're still, even if you're in a different mental model, you have more of a grounding in terms of what things mean in this new model.
Yeah, for me, when I'm mapping that too, is I've spent overall total about 5 years of my life in Mexico, and I love Mexican culture. I'm fluent in Spanish, um,
Mm-hmm.
and in fact, that's my, if I had to pick a culture, it'd be
Mm-hmm.
I like to live in. And in Mexico, I kind of found myself within a Mexican framework, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of different memes, different images, different. And so, like in Mexico, a close buddy of mine and I, if we're having a conversation, down, walking in a park or something, we would literally just put our arms over each other's shoulders, right? Now, in the United States, that's not how straight men, express affection to each other, right? They express it in different ways. But in Mexico, this was the way to express affection, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Anyway, and I'm sure since you're an American living in France, you found all these, lots of maybe parallel kind of similar things where you express yourself in the French way, right? Whereas in
Mm-hmm.
the United States, you would have expressed yourself in the American way. But I think for me, this maps to this kind of commonality that we have, which could be, masked or obscured by, specific cultural artifacts of one culture or one tribe or another, but really at the core, there's something there that's common, right? Far beyond specific cultural forms of expression. Hi.
Mm-hmm. She can't hear you because I have headphones.
Oh, I know, but I just want her to see I'm waving.
They're waving at you, sweetie pie. No.
That's okay. That's okay.
Yeah, with girls, you never want to be like, oh, be nice and say hi if they don't want to, because, who knows? Like, you have to like just let girls like, um, trust their instinct, even if it's rude. I'd rather have my daughters just be rude than, be like, you have to be nice. No, you don't have to be nice.
Totally. See, for me, it's a whole different situation, because for me, when a young woman enters the room, I have to acknowledge her. I can't just keep talking and not acknowledge her, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm. Yeah, so I am gonna go in just a couple minutes, just to get a move on my Saturday and spend some time with the girls and stuff.
Yeah. Well, for me, did you ever see Mork and Mindy, that show from the?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so for me, seeing you at like 3 a.m, it's like, Mork calling Orkin, Mork calling Orkin, come in Orkin. This this way predates you, Nolan. I'll get you up to speed later. But anyway, it's just like because it's like the early morning hours, which is a very special time. You're in a different reality. Your mind is open in different ways, and here we are. It's like I'm talking to the future, of collective intelligence. You're on planet Orkin, having seen it all before.
When I lived in Brooklyn, I always used to go to parties really late because I was like primping. And so I'd arrive to the party at 1 a.m. and everyone would look at me and they're like, oh my God, you look so fresh. The rest of us are like frazzled. We've been dancing all night.
Awesome. Well, here you are, looking quite fresh, and here we are.
Okay, I'm going to go. My daughter needs me.
Great to see you, Lauren. Thanks so much. Have a great weekend, and we'll
Bye, Nolan. Bye, Jamin.
see you later. Thanks, Lauren. See you soon. Wow, super cool. Anyway, here, let me get a jacket real quick. I'll be right back. It's getting a little cold out here. Actually, let me also hit the head. I'm just going to pause, and I'll be back in like 3 minutes. Okay. So I also really liked what we were talking about earlier, where you were talking about basically different like echelons or levels of problems, right? As we're going through these stages of collective evolution. And I think one of the problems of this moment in history is it's an elephant in the room problem of what's it going to take for us to come together in conversation as a species. And when I say in conversation, this is this level N+1 conversation, which means a network of conversations, right? And there'll be a moment when humanity is like, well, of course, a network of conversations, right? And so like if there's a specific problem, like, an asteroid is coming towards Earth, it's due to arrive in 17 days. Oh, well, let's manifest the right network of conversations to deal with that. Like, obviously, right? Okay, but but right now we're new to this concept of a network of conversations, and we're kind of going from 0 to 100 miles per hour in a half a second, trying to create kind of this mother of all networks as our sort of foray into this, when it's a life and death thing. And in terms of the zoomosphere and the CSI, the forms of CSI that we've been envisioning and talking about. But again, one of the problems at this moment is to finally freaking make that jump into a network of conversations, a healthy network of conversations, where it's easy to move around the network. And just like how like the early versions of the internet, there was all this work on protocols and data protocols and all that, so that like stuff could talk to each other, right? Really simple stuff. Well, look, that same problem that the internet had with data, this new internet of conversations has with people, right? We need to know how to talk to each other, right? There needs to be, dare I say, protocols, right? In terms of like, a standard protocol of people talk for 2 minutes, then it's somebody else's turn, then it's somebody else's turn. And to the extent that that's even not automated, but, computer assisted, as opposed to, okay, my watch says 2 minutes, I'm going to have to ask you to shut up. No, just automatically muted. And next, it is now Nolan's turn. Oh, thanks, Siri. Yeah, so I was about to say that it's not like there's no arm wrestling to see who the fuck talks next. And in terms of the scenarios I was talking about earlier, I don't want to name names, but in those kinds of scenarios could be completely avoided by just having rules. You want to talk, you raise your hand. Okay, Jamin, 2 minutes. And everyone can see, and it's all, automated. That part is automated. The policing of that is freaking automated. Right? Anyway, what I'm suggesting actually is that when we have the right protocols, it's going to facilitate us actually solving this problem. Because whatever problem we're setting out to solve, we need the right tools, and data protocols could be an important subset of the total tool set that we need for this, right? How do we talk to each other, right? Anyway, this is me going off about a big part of what I see about this next level of problems where we're at now is this meta solution of CSI. And I'm saying it is freaking time. We have no time to waste and dilly-dally. And so the big problem of our time is, how do we come together as a network of communities, and as a community of communities and a network of conversations? How do we do that now? Not 10 years from now. Now. With the tools that we have. Make sure you don't fall asleep in your chair, Nolan, because you could hit the ground or something. So. You should get some sleep. Otherwise, it's going to be like having a conversation with Mona Nolan. Not Mona Lisa, but Mona Nolan. Having a conversation with a painting.
That she's sad.
No, she actually looks happy. But the point is, she's a painting, right? But when you look at her, it kind of draws you in, and you kind of think you're having a conversation. But wait a second, it's a painting. So I'm just saying, when you're kind of frozen there, it's like, okay, are we having a conversation? Anyway. Yeah. We should call this portion of the block party warm beer. You know, it's like 4 a.m. All the ice is melted. All that's left is warm beer. But hey, man, if that's what there is, I'll drink it. We're just gonna look. Anyway, if that's our big problem, or a big problem, a big part of the solution for me is the press conference, where we blast out to the world a message that is just inescapable. You cannot escape from it, right? It will track you down. Inescapable. I mean, like feeding everyone in Brooklyn, that's inescapable. And you kind of unleash waves of evangelists. Like the whole vegan community will just become instant evangelists of this story, right? And it's not that all vegans will suddenly jump in and join the conversation. Some are quite reclusive, some are quite shy, but some will, right? So you got vegans jumping in, you got New Yorkers jumping in, you got permaculturalists jumping in, right? You got farmers jumping in, CSAs, food banks, governments, churches. And so it creates this singularity that has this singular pull, right? That gives people a reason to jump in and just do the network now, as opposed to later when there's great tools for it.
Another way of thinking about it is we have conversations going on. Oh, conversation in the very strict sense of just verbal talking. That's ultimately how we, well, it's one way we communicate with each other. So this basically all I'm saying is the network of conversations already exists. So I think it's only so much about creating something totally new. It's about making whatever's already happening smoother and more effective, or enabling some other dynamic that's totally different from what's already happening, enabling that dynamic by making the technology that facilitates it just like super smooth. Like maybe um, you'd okay, you don't have to be on a Zoom call to meet with, say, 10 people, but maybe there's technology that would still enable a 10-person meeting in person to go more smoothly, like that just has the same tools that you were talking about earlier, like a timer, and then it's like just an AI assistant you're talking to, right? Basically that could exist outside of Zoom and outside of the internet completely, right? Just at a round table. That's those are that's a tool or a set of tools. That's one thing. And then another thing is thinking about all of the conversations that are already happening in person, not over the internet, and how can each of those be connected in better ways? They're already connected, but how can they be connected even better? And then there's all of the conversations that haven't been happening over Zoom that now are happening more over Zoom because of the coronavirus. And then how can they, like one of the scenarios that pops up for me is like, say you have three say you have um like I think about in-person conversations between people that uh, they're not going to just hop on Zoom in order to help manifest this network. Um, like they're not just going to do that. Like let's say there's a crazy A team of 5 people and they can get together in person, and they do, and they whiteboard and they go crazy and it's awesome. My goal is not to convince them to all start using Zoom instead of that, right? It would be cool if that experience of the 5 of them in person could be shared with more people and integrate more people somehow in a useful way that's not overbearing to, like, because they have too many people trying to participate, and that's not a cause for privacy concerns, which is that a bunch of people are watching, and um, but like in the case of those 5 people working in person, um, it's not just that they need to hop on Zoom to I guess I'm just thinking along the lines of like trying to get right up to the edge of like what I like I'm going to assume and guess that there's a very high probability of basically I'm gonna assume that there's a significant amount of connections being made powered by Zoom and other web services already that constitute a very significant amount of the collective superintelligence activity we talk about, right? Like a lot, but we're just talking about making that even better and more integrated somehow. I have a hard time seeing I was gonna say I have a hard time seeing a I guess I'm kind of my part of me wants there to be some mega platform, and another part of me says that all we're going to have are a diversity of different specialized services that can work together, but that there ends up being this uh like um hmm, like 10 companies spawn and they basically do the same thing. They all fit into basically they build something that is a component that fits into roughly the same spot in this abstract CSI machine we're talking about. But then it's just like eventually the best component wins kind of thing. Or sometimes there's a okay, it's narrowed down to a few of them and there's some trade-offs between the components or something. But but you I don't want to say you never get to the basic component because
you always have choice. And what you're describing sounds like Linux, right? Where it's decentralized, right? It's open source, and whoever, if you choose whatever version you want to choose, right? So Red Hat Linux is different from IBM Linux, is different from Berkeley clinics, whatever. Anyway, you get my point. That's just an example of what I think you're saying, right? And that way, because it's open source and everyone chooses what they want, it's all good, right? Now,
But you can use the same. There's a substrate that allows you to use any of those and still use the same packages and like develop and be able to have it running on these different platforms. So it's,
yeah.
there's, I don't know, I'm just kind of playing with this dichotomy of like basically everyone conforms to the world decides USB, or whatever. The world decides HDMI, whatever standards, and then on the other end, just I don't know what to call that.
Yeah. Totally. And right now it's kind of a hodgepodge, right? Certain people are connecting on Slack, and then like somebody like me shows up and says, I don't know how the hell to deal with this, right? This is not my familiar interface. And so I kind of, an old dog that doesn't want to learn new tricks is repelled by that. And so I'm where I'm comfortable. Others are meeting on Facebook, others are tweeting. And so it's like, it's, it's kind of like a city, like, New York City, having like 7 different competing telephone companies. This is back in the old days of landlines, right? Where you're either on one network or another, but the networks like don't talk to each other. You can imagine how dysfunctional that would be. Well, that's us right now. Yeah, that's humanity on the internet. This is the Manhattan of humanity coming together and to fix shit, right? We're all co-inhabiting this virtual city called the city of fix this planet before we all die. And there's 17 different telephone companies, and you're only on one of those networks at a time. I actually think there was a time, and I may be totally screwed up on this, but like there was a time when like in Chicago, there were like competing telephone networks like this. And someone who was, like, I don't know, a high powered attorney or somebody like that who just had to be connected would literally have 3 different phones, one from each company on his desk. Right. Oh, this guy's on network B. Let me pick up telephone B. Hey, Charlie. Yeah. For our meeting on Friday, I want you to bring da-da-da-da. Okay, bye. Right. So that's kind of where we're at now.
So then to solve that problem, there's two ways that immediately come to my mind, which is either the telephone companies decide to interconnect somehow, right? From like, if all the people are on the outside and then there's some companies on the inside, right? It's either the companies all decide to interconnect this way, or, right, everyone on the outside, they have their multiple lines, right? They have 3 lines, then they figure out a way to make that one line for themselves, right? And then they can give that solution to everyone else. So that the companies don't ever have to cooperate, but you end up getting a solution that it's like, because everyone, you see what I'm saying? There's 2 different endpoints for, and so like, I don't know. The companies aren't based. It's like there's good web services and the companies aren't they're not incentivized to cooperate. And I am tempted to say, but am holding myself back from saying that that is purely a monetary thing.
It's purely a monetary thing because, and this gets to this level n+1 problem where we're at now, which is to get beyond those shackles. It's like if you're one of the 7 competing telephone companies in Chicago, right? You're locked in a game of more market share for us, less for the competitors, right? Just by the dynamics of the game that's been set up. You don't, until a light bulb goes off and one of the bigger companies says, all right, you know what, there's an opportunity for us to just fucking merge and create one unified Chicago telephone network, right? And we all get a slice of the merged pie, proportional to our current market share, current revenue, whatever, right? Find some objective way. But that's a specific for that. What we're talking about here, there are different ways to, there are different ways this can go down, lots of different strategies. What I have in mind is to create something that is so absolutely compelling, so attractive, that it draws in so many people at once in this singularity that there becomes effectively tremendous social pressure to fucking just get on Zoom, right? Let's say that Zoom is the way that we choose to do this, right? Then we're basically saying, all right, telephone company A is the one and all others are illegal for purposes of this project. It's brutal, it's dictatorial, it's centralized, it's all these bad things, right? And we say, and this is the way, this is just the way it is. Welcome to Brooklyn Eats. Welcome to this project. We meet on Zoom and here's the calendar. Join us, right? And here's the process for adding new meetings and new communities to the calendar. We essentially just say, you can have any flavor you want as long as it's chocolate, and here's the chocolate. We just, but what gives us the power to do that is the singularity of feeding everyone in Brooklyn as the first domino of this wave that's going to go around the world, which is we're finally going to feed everyone plant-based foods. Boom. So that becomes this new meme that's focused on this one place, which happens to be, the biggest borough in New York City, which happens to be, one of 2 media capitals of the world, New York and LA. And so it just becomes this pure signal beacon to the world on a topic that at one level could not be more fundamental. The topic of food, right? All animals, human and otherwise. We wake up in the morning and we got food on the brain. Whether we scavenge, whether we hunt, whether we this, whether we that, food on the brain. So it's so elemental. And it says, all right, we're solving this in such a way that it will also solve pandemics, right? That's super compelling. And we're going to implement it right in the hardest hit community on earth, Brooklyn. Bam. It's like, give me the hardest thing you got, right? Go ahead.
Um, my only issue is with the messiness of tying all these different things together.
All what different things?
Um, the easiest, most blatant way I can express what I'm thinking and feeling is literally just asking, what the fuck are we doing? Because we're not going to do any of these things we're talking about on our own.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that. There's a pathway that we've mapped out today that addresses exactly that.
But
I mean, if you're putting a challenge and you want me to answer it, I'm happy to answer it. If you're putting a challenge and you don't want me to answer it, then let's see how that goes.
it's not that I don't want you to answer it, it's that I want to make it very clear what I'm just trying to make it very clear what I'm saying. And it's not a matter, part of what I'm trying to say is it's not just a matter of taking all these pieces and arranging them in a certain way. Part of what I'm trying to say is literally the number of pieces is what I'm bringing up. And like,
Okay, and when you say the number of pieces, do you mean the number of problems and solutions in the real physical world? Do you mean the number of different web services that exist or could exist? Like, what are the pieces? Pieces of what?
I'm mainly thinking about CSI, SRM, and OSS.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. So there are the physical counterparts for each of those, and then there's the conversational counterparts for each of those. And I say we focus first on the conversational pieces and leave the physical world for a next phase, right? So we simplify our lives by making the pieces conversations, which can be characterized as including one or typically more than one topic. And so the management problem for this particular phase, which is all about conversations, the management problem is reduced to the management of topics and the management of communities participating in a given topic. And it's kind of like that video we were seeing about the gentleman in Pakistan, where it was about, you know, dialing it back and dialing it back and dialing it back to a first step that's believable and, you know, actionable and all that, as opposed to the full in one swing. And so if we take as a first step, the very first step of, hey, we're here to have conversations about feeding everyone in Brooklyn. Let's say that's the very first baby step, right? Feed everyone in Brooklyn. Whole food, plant-based. And we want to now take that very limited domain and break it down into a logical taxonomy of topics, a logical map of topics. That's the thing to manage. And then we can then have, for starters, focused conversations on each topic, right? It's kind of like when you first learn to play the piano. You don't first start by playing some chord that requires all 10 fingers. You start with one finger and one key. Bing, 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 bing. You kind of master that, and then dun, 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 dun. You know, black keys, white keys, all that. Next thing you know, you're doing 2 keys at once and all that. So I'm just like being very disciplined about dialing it back to a starter set that's actionable and meaningful, and that will actually attract people together, paradoxically. So the starter set, if the domain is feeding everyone in Brooklyn, then you have, you know, you can chunk it out into food production, food preparation, and food distribution, right? That's one, boom, boom, boom. Those are 3 topics. Another is, you know, funding, volunteers, and, you know, supporting organizations, right? Boom, 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 another 3 topics, right? And so on. And you just build out this map of topics for that very limited domain, schedule time for each topic at every block party and every solution club. So we get on a schedule that's particularly friendly to Eastern time zone, I might add, right? In terms of topics that are like really local focused. Other meetings don't have that time zone constraint or have other time zone constraints. Let me give you an example. So, and by the way, James gave me a statistic that just blew my mind, which is that there's 5.5 million people in Ireland, but 700 million people around the world of Irish descent, right? And you and I are probably included in that 700 million. But anyway, and of those 700 million, a huge portion went through Brooklyn. So this is fascinating. And then we watched this really inspiring video earlier today about this exchange and support between Ireland and a First Nations community in the Americas, and how both communities had helped each other going back to the 1800s. And another thing that's fascinating is that Ireland is a First Nation community, right? That was also occupied by a colonizer, England, right? And so there's all this amazing affinity between Ireland and the Americas, right? And so among the groups supporting this, among the communities within the community of communities, is going to be a community that's nascent now in Ireland called. So if the program in Brooklyn is called Brooklyn Eats, the community in Ireland is called Ireland Loves Brooklyn Eats. Ireland Loves Brooklyn Eats. And it would show, you've seen those t-shirts that show like I heart NY. I love New York. I heart NY. Yeah, they're very common. Yeah, okay. So imagine Ireland, whether the shape of the country, green or whatever, and then a red heart, Ireland Loves, and then the logo for Brooklyn Eats. And so it's a community of Irish in Ireland who are supporting and participating in Brooklyn Eats. What do you mean supporting and participating? Now, we covered this last week, but were you there for that part of the conversation where we talked about how the lead singer of the Boomtown Rats, the Irish band from the 80s, his name is Sir Bob, he's now a Sir, whatever, Sir Bob, I forget how to pronounce his last name, I could look it up, but he's Irish. He is the one who started the whole aid campaigns, music aid, Feed the World, Feed Africa, when all these famines were going on. He was the one who actually started it all. And then it spread to the Americas and became a huge thing, right? But imagine that he participates in this, right? Even virtually, and sings the song, I don't like Mondays. Do you know that song? I don't like Mondays. Tell me why. I don't like Monday. I'm gonna shoot. Ooh, the whole day down. Dun, dun, dun. It's this beautiful song. You'll have to play it. When I played it at the last block party at this time, YouTube blocked the video because it's a song, copyright, and all that stuff. So I don't want to jinx this video, but just play it sometime. You'll love it. In fact, we could even just take a 5-minute break and just play it, and then we come back because it's powerful. And it also relates to the beginning of a very dark period of history of school shootings. It was a song about the first school shooting in like 1980 or 79 or whenever it was in San Diego, right? I mean, it was.
I don't like interrupting your flow, but I got to use the bathroom pretty bad. And
let's take a 5-minute break. Don't worry about the flow. It's all good.
Okay.
See you in 5, or do you need 10?
5 is fine.
Okay, see you in 5.
All right.
All right. I forget exactly where we were, but I know I was talking about, the Irish, Ireland Loves Brooklyn Eats. So of the hundreds of millions of people of Irish descent, a lot of them have passed through Brooklyn, right? And there are whole Irish neighborhoods in Brooklyn and in New York generally. When the Irish American community, of which Jamie is a member, for example, when the Irish American community learns that Ireland is helping Brooklyn to eat, that's just going to draw them right in. And that's getting the nose of the camel into the tent, is getting them interested. You know the thing about how to get a camel into a tent, right? Have I?
Multiple times for me over the past 2 or 3 weeks.
Okay, great. So I'll just repeat it one more time. I'm just kidding. Anyway, so I'm just joking. Wait, you froze up. Now you're totally frozen. Your image is frozen. I hear your sound just fine, but your image froze up. That's interesting. Huh. Okay, now you're back. Now you're back. Okay. But anyway, so many people in so many communities are going to be drawn into this conversation. But among the notable communities are the vegan community and the media. National media, international media, and New York. New York and LA are the two. I would say, if anything, LA is probably a bit more important, but New York is definitely right there. And so the media community and the vegan community, right there. And then the New York community. 3 big communities. And now we're bringing in the Irish community, the Irish American and the Irish in Ireland, right? And the Irish in Ireland will come to the table saying, look, why are we here? Yes, we want to help our brothers and sisters in Brooklyn. And we also want to help more generally participate in the building of a model for how to do this that can go all around the world, including to Ireland. Right? Anyway, all it is saying is let's all get together on this and make it happen. And feed everyone. See, this is one of those level N+1 problems, feeding everyone. Finally powering the whole computer of collective superintelligence, to quote Stephen Weisberg. He's like, yeah, it's powering the whole computer. Duh. Right? It's like once you put it on the table, it's obvious. And it's like what there is to do is to do it. Oh, but it's a level N+1 problem. Well, we're at level N+1. Welcome to level N+1. This is what there is to do right now. And the access for doing it, one pathway to get there, one exponential domino pathway is the one I'm suggesting, where we start by building out these conversations as conversations, where that's the irreducibly complex starter set single DNA strand that got it all started. Is that those topics and those meetings held with frequency, wash, rinse, repeat, and get the cycle going. And then just keep inviting more people from Brooklyn, from Ireland, from the vegan community, right? And then at some critical point, probably within a week or so, we reach out to the borough president of Brooklyn, right? With our proposal. And with links to meetings that we're already having on all these topics, appropriately chunked out, right? Here's Brooklyn Eats, our meeting with with New Yorkers, led by Jackie, who's from New York, right? Here's our Irish community. Ireland loves Brooklyn Eats, or Ireland for Brooklyn Eats, if you want it to be a little more professional, right? Ireland for Brooklyn Eats, and so on. We send that to the mayor of Brooklyn, and we've got ways to get through to him. We reach out to Sir Bob, and listen. So we were speculating how do we get through to Sir Bob? Sir Bob, he's this famous rock star, and then Stephanie pops in, and she says, "Well, it just so happens that a colleague of mine at work just interviewed Sir Bob." Hey, I know what I'll do. What? All right, resuming after a pause. All right, and welcome back. So, having a pretty cool conversation here. What happened to James? Anyway, James is the one who told us all about this connection with Sir Bob and the Boomtown Rats and all that. So imagine he performs that, 40 years later through Zoom with the Boomtown Rats from Dublin, Ireland, right, in support of Brooklyn. And I take it also you haven't seen the other video about the support between Ireland and the First Nations. Did you see that one, Nolan? I know you saw that one, so, right? Here, let me play that for you. It's a minute and a half long. All right. Let me get the right video up. And there it is. 173 years later. This is so powerful. All right.
It's a bond between two communities formed in a time of deep crisis, commemorated with this sculpture. In 1847, at the height of the famine here, the Choctaw Nation of Native Americans gathered what money they could and sent it across the Atlantic to help those suffering. 170 years on, that goodwill is now being reciprocated. A fundraiser for Navajo and Hopi Native American families has seen donations from Ireland pouring in. The US organisers initially perplexed.
We noticed a flux of donations from Ireland, and our leadership team was like, what's going on? And so we started looking into it, and we started reading the comments about the history between the Choctaw Nation and Ireland. And we were so fascinated, and we just thought it was so beautiful.
One of those who has contributed is a Native American living in Galway.
I think it's amazing to see that the Irish are helping Native American tribes the way that the Native American tribes helped the Irish during the famine. It's just awesome to see it.
The money raised is being spent on vital supplies for a community that knows all too well about suffering. Native Americans saying Ireland's generosity this time around has made the connection between the two stronger.
With the bond between two peoples who had been dispossessed, that had started in 1847, so long ago, is continuing out in the world today, and I think it's a beautiful thing.
Across the Atlantic and across generations, the goodwill continues. Conor Hunt, RTE News.
And James made the point that of all the European countries, the Irish donate more per capita when there are these international emergencies, relief, etc. And he maps it back to the famine in the 1800s, where so many Irish perished and so many had to flee the country to the Americas. Just it was these were not climate refugees, but virus refugees. If it was a virus or bacteria or whatever it was that attacked the potato crop, the potato famine. But it was more complex than that, as James says. But the bottom line is that the Irish have this deep empathy and compassion and solidarity internationally. And oh my goodness, and Sir Bob, the rock star, with that song and leading the charge on that, there's just such a rich legacy there. And then with this connection, rich legacy. So this is something which is helping the world heal its wounds. And the Ireland-Brooklyn connection and just the world. The thing is, everyone's represented in New York. It's got the United Nations, right? Imagine we create the United Nations of food in Brooklyn. So instead of like this oval of flags, this beautiful oval of international flags, it would be an oval of flags, but on each flag would be a different vegetable, right? Broccoli, eggplant, mushrooms, you know, and that's where we really gently lay out that this is plant-based, right? Make it visually, make it artistic. Really make this thing in Brooklyn a thing, because listen, if you can make it there, you'll make it anywhere. It's up to you. New York, New York, da, 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 da. See, New York has like this thing, right? That, you know, it's had for hundreds of years. And so what is this thing? This thing is, we're going to start it here and take it to the world. So many things have started in New York and gone to the world. So this becomes one of those things. Feed everyone. End pandemics. Cool the planet. Heal the planet. This is not rocket science. Feed everyone. End pandemics. Cool the planet. Heal the planet. Because plant-based food is planet-based food. Somebody stuck an E in there. That's pretty cool. Plant-based food is planet-based food. Healthy for you, healthy for the planet. And if we don't cool and heal the planet, no food for you of any kind. No food for you. Thank you, So. So says it's a good slogan. Plant-based food is planet-based food. Plant-based, planet-based. That's right. Plant-based, planet-based foods. Foods that support life on Earth as opposed to destroy life on Earth. All that is to say is, I think we've got a super dank strategy that will just concentrate attention and focus, feed everyone in Brooklyn. It'll be the miracle of Brooklyn. Brooklyn will become one giant block party, everyone in their respective living rooms, but on Zoom. Talk about a block party. Oh, and where do these meetings on Brooklyn happen? On the block party and on the Solution Club. Yeah, we're going to have visitors. Clean off the dining room table, Edith. We're going to have visitors. We got company coming over. This is that next stage problem. Oh, Geldof, thank you. So it's Bob Geldof. Yeah, he looked awesome in that video. And he said, listen to this. This is very telling. He said right then, I just realized this is the best day of my life. Why? Because it was the culmination of this effort to feed everybody. Nothing feels better than feeding everyone. Nothing feels better than feeding everyone. And you know, one of the super cool things is the Food Networks, the Food Network. That's the very foundation of an economy. It all starts from there. The whole reason there were trades and professions and everything else was because there was a food surplus, so people could take their time away from the fields and put it into other things. And then they started specializing, and you know how the story goes, right? The current food networks are falling apart. As the president of Tyson Foods said publicly, the supply chain is breaking or broken. I forget what it was, but it was just like, holy shit. And that's what he's saying publicly. You can imagine what he's saying privately, right? Anyway, I learned that from Guy McPherson in his last couple of interviews. So stuff's breaking everywhere. And this is the perfect moment when everything is all jumbled up and broken in a million pieces on the floor, when we can come together with something new. And out of the ashes rises the phoenix. The phoenix of feeding. The phoenix. That doesn't come out so good. Anyway, you get my point. It's just the perfect moment to crystallize this community and center it and focus it on a specific location. We start these conversations now in the coming days, centered around Brooklyn. We reach out to the mayor, we seal the deal, we set the date, and, you know, with the Irish community in Ireland leading the charge, and then the Irish Americans are going to blow the whistle, and this thing's going to go berserk. Absolutely berserk, with support pouring in from all the corners of the globe. Wow. Oh my goodness.
Well, Jamin, I think it's time I get some rest.
All right. Very, very good, Nolan. Very good. Awesome. Great to see you. Great work today. Thank you so much for taking the midnight shift and powering through it. Really appreciate it. I know those can be some tough hours, and you did great. And look forward to talking with you, catching up in a few days whenever it's good. And looks like So dropped out. So it's going to be me and Emery. We'll hold the fort, right, Emery? All right. We got this. Emery's giving me all these high fives and stuff, so I know everything's good. All right. Awesome. Thanks so much, Dylan.
All right. Well,
I'm going to pause recording for a moment. All right. So after a brief pause there. I mean, really, by putting in the hours, these long format 24-hour collective intelligence block parties where we're really able to get into it, that's really enabled us to go deep and refine, clarify, and then boom, this is it. And this is exactly where to start. Right down to what to do right now. And the cool thing is, if we don't know what to do right now, we figure it out in conversation right now. So we deal with it right now. So we're always in the right now, in the moment. That for me is a big part of it. I'm going to pause and take that in. I know I'll have more to say about it. So I'll be back. All right. Welcome back, Emery. And after a little break, resume building off the idea I was talking about. So the thing about the network of conversations is that in conversation, we can figure out and resolve the following. We could take, remember the Pakistan video you showed us, right? Where it's like how to build a Google, and then bringing it back to increasingly more manageable, easy to envision starting segments, right? And you just keep bringing it back and bringing it back and bringing it back. There's a singularity here, which is, bring it back and bring it back, bring it back. What's the simplest statement? What's the simple, not statement, what's the simplest step? What's the simplest segment? What's the simplest starting segment that we could have, right? And the shortest, simplest starting segment that we could possibly have is none other than, and this is going to sound kind of silly, but just bear with me. But the simplest, here, let me just say good morning to the crows for a moment. Cluck, cluck, cluck. Hello, Daquan. Cluck, cluck. I like saying good morning to the crows. Anyway, so the simplest, the shortest, simplest, most immediate next step is, drum roll, the very next statement made in this conversation. If this is the conversation where the action is happening, where the action is being forwarded. And you might say, well, wait a second, well, what do you mean where the action is forwarded? Maybe the action is forwarded simultaneously across multiple different vectors. And I would say fine, but for any given topic, there needs to be a place of record. There needs to be a conversation of record. It could be happening in 20 different video conferences, 20 different rooms, 20 different meetings, but then all 20 should be represented, right? So that but the point is that at any given moment, there's at least one meeting that you can land in, at least one, minimum one, that you can land in to move this topic forward in terms of either definition of the topic, the breaking down of the topic into manageable parts, right? Not just manageable, but actionable, right? We want to break it down. And this gets back to the Pakistan video, where it's there, he's breaking it down in the linear dimension of time of things that happened, that have to happen sequentially or in a certain sequence. But other things can happen in parallel. And but anyway, there is the breaking it down into its logical subtopics and breaking those down until you get to things which can actually be resolved, either in conversation or through some combination of conversation and action in the physical world, right? Like delivering a truckload of broccoli somewhere, right? And and in either case, if we accept the premise that the center at any given moment of action, the center of action, the heart, the core of action, for any given topic is in that Zoom meeting, or those Zoom meetings if there's more than one. Oh man, the sun's getting my eyes. I just have to turn a little bit. Let me just pause for a second. Okay, so continuing. I realize I'm being kind of hand wavy here, but at its core, it's very simple. And the core statement is this, the core premise is this, that number one, well, I'm going to break it down into this core premise. I'm going to break it down into parts. Part one, existence. That there exists a center to any topic within the grand taxonomy of topics, and more on that later. But part one, existence. There exists a center. Part two is conversation. And what that says is that there is a conversation associated with that center, right? Okay. And that conversation, okay, so that's part two. If there's a center, there's a conversation there at the center. And part three is basically says, what if we all agree to play a game that goes like this? For every topic in which you are playing a leadership role, fundamental to your leadership role is the creation of and participation in meetings, Zoom, but not necessarily Zoom, but video conference meetings that are recorded, broadcast, transcribed, put on the calendar, ideally weeks in advance of the actual meeting, but you know, the important thing is to get it there on the calendar so that people have visibility to it. And whether you know it's just open to all members that just walk right in, or if they have to request permission first and somehow, you know, perhaps answer a question or two about what their intention is in joining. You know, ultimately it's up to the meeting organizer, but imagine that we play a game that basically goes, we agree that the real game is moving forward all these different topics, each within its own priority. So whatever the number one priority, most urgent topic is to move forward, we can kind of swarm around that, kind of rugby style. Swarm around that, move it forward, right? And then the second most urgent, maybe we swarm around that and move it forward in parallel with the first. Why not? See, it kind of all depends upon resources in the sense of human resources, in the sense of, you know, who is available, right, to participate. And so I'm gonna have to sleep on it. You know, it's been a really awesome block party, and it's time for me to get some sleep. It's 2 minutes before 6 a.m. Pacific time Saturday morning, so we're getting close to our countdown moment. Yeah, well, we're a minute away from countdown. So anyway, I'm going to sleep on and formulate how to best articulate this. This idea of the center for any given topic being a conversation, and that conversation being full blown whenever there are video conferences like this one. And in between video conferences, if there's some asynchronous conversation via Reddit or whatever, that's great. But even still, that does not substitute for this face-to-face checking. All right, shall we do the countdown, Emery?
Okay.
Let's do it. All right, we'll count down from 10. This is the conclusion of the 13th consecutive Collective Intelligence Block Party. All right. 10, 9, 8,
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yay, yay, yay. Yeah.
Awesome. Emery, dude, 13 consecutive.
Oh, it's incredible.
And you probably put in as many hours as I have.
I think running neck and neck.
What an experience, huh?
Yeah. I think it's been very successful, you know. And I think we're going to achieve the goal. You know, we take it step by step, like you're thinking about it now. You know, draw it back. It's great. I think that's a smart plan. You know, you have the breakout rooms. prioritize the different conversations as they happen. You could have a number of these breakout rooms